What?
את הרעיונות ניתן לבצע בכל שפה.
Yeah.
Anyway, just speak about your
Well, we first have to start from before we made Aliyah.
the fact that you met here.
Well, they're gonna want to. They want to know
What our background is, how we grew up.
Okay.
Okay, so and you could finish it in one take.
You might, I don't know, maybe you'll have.
Okay.
I think we're going to do a second.
Mayor, is this recording?
Yeah, I'll cut it off at
He's
that.
not participating.
I am participating.
It's going to be 2 takes. Well, you should start by asking us our names.
Oh.
And who we are.
So I'll start off by asking, by then you know that, so weird. I'll start off and say thank you for participating in this interview. I want you to tell me your names and tell me a little bit about your experience, why you decided to move to Israel, what brought you here, your background, anything you feel comfortable speaking about.
You can also speak in Hebrew, and then we can answer in English. I'm Kaylee Novick.
I'm Brian Novick.
You're Azriel Novick.
So anyway, in order to explain why we moved to Israel, it's something that started many years before we met each other. I think that we both grew up in religious homes where Zionism was a very important part of our lives. I know growing up, Israel was something we always spoke about. Growing up as a child, before the internet, so the first thing I would do when I woke up in the morning would be to pick up the newspaper and look through the newspaper to see if there was any article about Israel or anything that was going on. The school I went to was very Zionistic, and
we always participated in rallies or in parades that were geared towards Israel, and at that time also the zuhut of being a modern Orthodox Jew was caring about fellow Jews, not only in Israel but also in the Soviet Union, and that was very much a part of how we were raised, to feel towards brotherhood towards other Jews, and a pride in being Jewish, and in a pride of being associated in some way to Israel. We came to Israel the year after high school, which was something that was commonly done in the modern Orthodox communities. It was a gap year, learning for a year. I was 17, Israel was 18, and we met and started our relationship there. We came back to America.
Well, do you want to say about the experience that you had during that year?
That year, in particular for me, was my first year in Israel, my first year of ever leaving the United States, my first year of ever being on a plane, my first year of ever being out of my house. And it was an extremely, extremely exciting year. And it was a year that I fell in love with the land of Israel and the people of Israel. Mostly for Shabbatot, I would ask to be set up in different people's homes. I would pick a place, and the school program that I was in would find a family, and we would just go there with friends, public transportation, and go. Some of the experiences we had were more interesting than other experiences, but sort of felt like we belonged as part of this large family. It didn't matter where they came and what their if they were Sephardim or Ashkenazim, they were Olim, or people were born here. It just made no difference, because we felt like we were part of a larger thing. And that was the time that I decided that I wanted to move to Israel, in theory. I never would have imagined being able to stay. So we went home and got educated, college degrees, married, and started a family in Israel. Started a family. As I got further away from that year, my love never stopped, but the reality is that it's comfortable in America. We both had good jobs. We were very close to our family. We started to have children. There was a nachat in knowing that our children were being raised with their cousins and the grandparents around. And my desire to move to Israel sort of receded into the background. And although in America, my life was good, we had good money, we weren't running from anything. We were starting our life, we were young, but our thoughts were that we would be able to make a good life in America. There were some undertones of being different, being the only religious Jew in most cases, or one of the only religious Jews in most cases. But we basically knew how to deal with that. We basically knew how to live and find our own way while maintaining our own zehut as a religious Jew and being able to contribute in the profession that we had.
I enjoyed my year in Israel. I can't say that at the time that I felt strongly about moving to Israel. I felt very connected to Israel. I felt very connected to the people of Israel. And as Kaylee said, when we came back to America, it was something that I was thinking about, but not something that I was actively pursuing. We weren't making any plans at the time to move to Israel. For me, one of the big changes in my life that changed my attitude towards sort of being passive and being more active in wanting to move to Israel was actually when I graduated university. I went throughout my education, elementary school, high school, and even university, I went to Jewish institutions. So the people that I always worked with and associated with were always like me. They were always Jewish. I never particularly felt connected to the larger American population. I felt American, but I did not feel a connection to the American people. Once I left college and I actually started my first job, it was there that I started to really feel different than everybody else. I felt that I was the Jew. There was no anti-Semitism, but I just felt different than everybody else. And it was at that point that I already started to think that maybe the place that I wanted to live, the place that I wanted to raise my family, the place where I wanted to live my life was amongst my people. And it was at that point that I started to seriously think about moving to Israel. It was not a very easy thing to do. First of all, it's not easy to make such a big change in your life. The easiest thing is to just roam and let life sort of take you. You have a certain direction. You have a little bit of a rudder on your boat, which helps you navigate a little bit right, a little bit left. But basically, you're going with the stream.
Especially if life was good.
Right, life was good.
Life was good.
So anytime that you want to go against the current and start to swim upstream, it requires a lot of work and a lot of effort. and a lot of difficulty. It wasn't so simple to make a change. So I started to research, because uprooting your life, moving your entire life to another part of the world where things are done differently. At the time, I thought that maybe the language was the biggest change,
Barrier.
The biggest barrier. Though my Hebrew was pretty good from elementary school and high school, but nonetheless, I thought that Hebrew would be the biggest barrier. But nonetheless, there was a lot of planning to uproot your entire life. We had a home, we had jobs. We had a way of life that we were used to, and to totally change that was something that was scary and something that I knew required a lot of research, a lot of time to prepare. So one of the things that I did was I started to go to different meetings from the AICPA, which is which is an organization in Israel for AACI, which was an organization for Americans who are interested in making Aliyah, and they would hold many different little meetings in America to explain
The technicalities
of making Aliyah.
A lot of those meetings were geared around different type of appliances, what we might take from our old life and put on a lift and ship to Israel, what paid to buy in Israel, and thoughts about different communities that we might want to live in. At the time we made Aliyah, there was no organization called Nefesh B'Nefesh, so there wasn't anything that sort of held your hand and led you through the process. It was going from office to office. And, putting our and trying to arrange for this Aliyah, which finally came. We made Aliyah when I was 28. Israel was, I guess, also 28, with 3 little children, the oldest being 5.5 and the youngest being 3 months old. We came to Israel with very little family, not a lot of money, and not a very large support system, to say the least. People back in America weren't quite sure why we had uprooted the family to move, even though we were raised in families that totally supported Israel, but I guess supporting Israel from far is different than supporting Israel and actually getting up and moving. So we were really the pioneers in our family in making Aliyah. We lived here for many years before any family came to join us. We had several friends here, not a heck of a lot of friends. Maybe just less than a handful of people that we knew, and none of them were really, maybe just one of them was really just a close friend. And we landed here, and on a hot summer day, very hot summer day, with a lot of dust around. And we had we were given one phone call from the Misrad Aliyah in the airport, which we called back to America to say that we safely landed. And we were given a hasa'ah to the Merkaz Klita Mevaseret Zion. And that was our beginning. Nobody meeting us in the airport besides a representative. And
there was a representative from the AACI, which was very nice. But
yeah, that was very, very nice
of her.
And just coming here, landing in a Merkaz Klita and having to that day just be regular. Supper needed to be prepared, and we did have, Israel had an office here. He had a job already in place, so they brought us dinner for that night, which was helpful to us. But besides that, we were just basically on our own to make it work the next morning. Taking kids out of their environment from people they love wasn't easy, even though people say that when you make aliyah, when your kids are young, it's easy. It's not easy. It's not easy for them. Children sense change. They sense a sense of instability going on. They sense their parents' concerns and fears and chashashot. And sometimes they react to that. They also want the comfort of what they left behind. So the whole family was definitely in turmoil and took years to settle down and sort of feel a little bit more comfortable and understand a little bit more what the days were like and what to expect, and understand the language, understand the culture, understand the differentness. The missing of the family never goes away. That's always something that stays with you for life. But slowly as the years progress, then if you want to make it work, then it can definitely work. I work as a physical therapist in Maccabi. I started working a year and a half after I made Aliyah. My Hebrew I learned from Ulpan for the year I lived in the Merkaz Klita. I'm not sure that it prepared me for Hebrew of work. And certainly the first day of work, I wasn't prepared. So the fact that I got through that day was a miracle, but I think the biggest miracle was going back the next day, knowing how difficult that first day was. Sort of feel like when you're very beginnings of Aliyah, which can even last for many, 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 many years, waking up in the morning, you start at a deficit from other people like you, because you just need to have more effort to get through the day. Your mind has to think in two different languages. You have to be able to adapt to two different cultures while you're sitting with somebody across the room from you, or you're doing interactions with people across from you. You have to make that mesh, and the people don't come to you. You have to come to them. You have to be the one to do the meshing. They're the stable part. You're the one who has to go and figure out how to change your culture to be able to do what you want to do, whether it's at work or accomplish things in your school or culturally. And you're the one who has to make change. And I would say you put in a lot more effort just to get through the day, in addition to then having to do all the tough keeping that you need to do to get through your day.
So one of the things, just to go back a little bit, one of the things that finally pushed us gave us that final push for us to move to Israel was that while I was in America, I was offered a job to work in Israel. So, I mean, one of the big concerns that people have in making Aliyah is, will I be able to, is that when you're in America, you have a job. How will I be able to find a job in Israel? Will I be able to find a job in Israel that will help me support my family? Those are very big questions. And those are questions that a lot of people are so concerned about that they might not move to Israel. So when I was offered a job, that was really an opportunity that doesn't present itself very often, and we decided to take that opportunity, however difficult the decision was. So when we came to the Merkaz, we also, again, one of the challenges that people have when they make Aliyah than if they stayed where they grew up, is that when you grow up with friends. You make friends, you make childhood friends. Those are usually friends that you're friends with for your entire life. And they form a sort of support system for you besides your family, who's your main support system. Then the secondary support system are your friends. When you move to a new country, you lose both of those support systems. And so we really didn't know, we had no family here, and we really had no friends here. The few people that we met weren't, as Kaylee said, weren't such close friends of ours, but they were what we had. And so a few of them had actually moved to Israel the year before we moved. And one of them had found a community that was just being built in Beit Shemesh, which was much more affordable than Jerusalem or any of the other cities. And since we really didn't know anybody, and we wanted to at least live in a community where we knew somebody, so we decided to move to Beit Shemesh. The house was in the process of being built. It was very, very cheap in those days. And so what we decided to do in the interim was to go to a Merkaz Klita, and that as soon as our house would be finished in Beit Shemesh, we would leave the Merkaz Klita and move to Beit Shemesh. Of course, it took a lot longer to finish the house than the contractor, the Kablan, had told us, so we ended up spending the entire year in the Merkaz Klita, which was not a very which had a lot of challenges.
When we moved to Beit Shemesh and our new community, there happened to have been a lot of new olim. Sometimes people will sort of say, "Oh, you're from Beit Shemesh," all the Anglo-Saxons, as Kilu, to sort of say, you still haven't sort of integrated fully. You live among a lot of Americans. Now, we chose the community because we knew one person. That was our staple person that we knew. At the time, the community was a very mixed kind of community. It did shortly after that turn into a community of more olim. Personally, I'm proud to be part of this community. I don't think that when a person moves to a different country, they have to lose the zehut of their Masorah, of what they were and where they came from. It's important for us. There was people who understood. There was other people who also left their families. Many of the amazing friends that we met over the years have been people who came also with young children. With our family, we did not have ketanot safta. If we worked and our child was sick, we didn't have saba and safta to call up and say, "Can you watch your child?" or our child. So our friends became our family. Our friends became our family where we did Lal Seder with them. Our friends became our family where we did Sudat Purim. Our friends became our family if we had to run to the hospital in the middle of the night because a child hit her head and while riding a bicycle, but we had to go. And so we called a friend to watch the rest of the children. And that's what we did. We were called when babies were born, and we would run over in the middle of the night to watch their children. We were called when there were broken arms and stitches that needed to be taken care of. And so we developed a sense of community, a sense of family that understood each other. And so as a result, we were able to really make that work. I don't ever really apologize for my being American. I happen to have been proud to be an American. I think that America offered a lot of opportunities for Jews, and they helped save lives when Jews were able to move over after Europe, and my family certainly did well in America in the sense that they moved from Poland. And so I did have a certain appreciation, and I liked the culture of America. So I don't apologize when people tell me that I'm too American, because I'm menumeset, I'm polite, and I won't shout. But on the other hand, in order to be able to function and understand how things work, you just have to understand the culture and learn how to speak to people in a language that they would understand from you. I think that in order to make a move like that work, you can't be embarrassed of where you came from. I am different. I speak differently. I speak Hebrew, but with an accent. And it's not hard to know where I came from. But I'm happy with that. I don't see that as being something that's not something to be proud of. I chose to move to Israel. I chose to make a change in my life that was very challenging. And I think that we acclimated well here. We both have jobs. Our children went through the school system in Israel and they've succeeded. They've planned for higher education. They're working in fields that are giving fields. They did Shirut Leumi, served in the army, had good tafkidim in the army. We vote like all Israelis. So when somebody says, are you Israeli or not? I don't know what that really means to be Israelis, because there are so many different definitions of being Israelis, but I think I'm an Israeli. I think I'm an American who made Aliyah. I don't do anything different than other Israelis who might consider themselves more Israeli than me. I pay taxes and I vote, send my kids to schools here, and I mingle with people on a regular basis. My closest friends are American because I feel that they relate most to me. They can understand me most. I can speak to them easier because my Sfat Em is English, but I don't wake up anymore in the mornings and say, well, I gotta really work hard just to get through the day. It's just a regular day now because it takes time. It takes a long time, but now it's just a regular day.
I think most Israelis Israelis who have not made Aliyah don't understand how difficult it is to make Aliyah, don't understand the challenges of making Aliyah, how difficult it is to start your life all over again and to have to learn everything that you do, have to learn it from the beginning, whether it's calling up Bezek or opening up a bank account.
And without protection.
And not having any protection, not having to call someone who's your cousin who just happens to work and who could tell you what you need to do or who you can speak to, but having to do it all on your own. That's something that's difficult. It's, as Kaylee mentioned, it's lonely. I don't think that anyone could understand, who's living here amongst their friends and family, what it's like in the Chagim to all of a sudden, be alone, with your family 6,000 miles away. That's a difficult thing that I think a lot of Olim have. It's also, besides the language, there's a whole tarbut in this country that as Olim, you're, certainly when you come off of the plane, you're not really aware of
pop culture, songs,
of anything.
Comedy.
I mean, maybe now it's a little bit easier with the internet. We made Aliyah before there was an internet, so we knew less, but still, the biggest part of our feeling more comfortable here in Israel is not only the language, but it's understanding a lot more about how the country works and understanding the politics and understanding the music and understanding how things work.
And the humor and the sarcasm.
And it's not something that you could understand, living in another country. It's only something that you could understand living here. How many years?
23.
23 years. I think also there comes a time where you also have to realize, like Kaylee said, that you're never going to be fully on the same level as everyone else with understanding the culture. You're always going to be a little different. You're never, when you're in a large group of people, it's going to be harder for you to take part in the conversations because it just takes you longer to get the words out in Hebrew. But it's also, it depends on how hard you want to become part of society. And, over the years, we've volunteered in different capacities, whether it's in the schools of our children, whether it's in local politics, whether it's actually even, going to different demonstrations in the country on larger national political issues. They all make you feel part of something larger. They make you feel more part of society. And over time, your connection also, not necessarily to the people, not to your family and not to your, in America, but your feeling of connection to America itself is less than it used to be. Going back it's always nice to to see family, but it's not the same feeling like it was when we first made Aliyah and we would come to America for a trip, and at the end of the trip you'd always feel sad, and obviously you feel sad because part of you doesn't want to leave because you still feel connected to America
and
comfortable, and you're going back to a country where even though you feel that that's the country that you belong to, and in your head that it's where you want to live, but it still doesn't make it easier because you might not feel as connected to that. But as time goes on, you feel less and less connected to America. I don't feel that way anymore. I feel actually different than everybody else in America, and I feel
somewhere in between two borders,
right?
Not exactly totally. I don't want to say connected, because again, connectivity is a whole different thing. What defines connectivity? Like I said, we're Israeli as just the next person. Maybe culturally we don't feel as. Among native Israelis, we don't understand the nuances fully of all the culture, but then we don't understand the nuances of the culture in America, because culture moves. Culture is not static. It's not static. It's a dynamic thing. So I would say we fly somewhere in between two kinds of cultures. We make our own culture somewhere in the middle. And again, I don't apologize anymore. I like that balance, l'shmor al zehut of my childhood, as well as being able to somehow blend that into a new zehut that I've formed. And I think that that's what makes a successful aliyah, is recognizing that you don't have to lose yourself in order to gain acceptance. Still be who you are and still be accepted in larger society.
But I think at this point that we feel more connected to even people who were born in Israel, in a sense that we feel, just as Israeli as they are, in a different sense. Maybe we don't have the same culture, but on the other hand, we've lived here.
Most of our friends are still American.
But what I'm saying is that we've lived here for 23 years, and this is where we made our home, and this is our home just as much as it is, for anyone who was born here.
But that's the home of a person who changed to a different place. Most of our friends are like us. Our thoughts are still in the safat of Anglit. Things that are, so I think again, it's, and we see that with different communities. We live near a community of a lot of Olim from Ethiopia, and it's not just a language that keeps them together. It's their culture that keeps them as a community. And I think that that's a nice thing. I think that we should be understanding that it's a nice thing, that we should be able to, on one hand, within what feels close to us, to be able to keep community going. But on the other hand, being able to go out to work and send your kids to school so that the next generation comes together. But they say it takes more than just one generation. It's a couple of generations.
But I wasn't disagreeing with you on that. What I was saying is that when I first came to Israel, even after I made Aliyah and I was a citizen of Israel, I still felt often that I was more like a guest. And that like the Israelis who were born here, it was their country and I was like a guest. And even though I was an Ezrach, but I was still like not the same type of Ezrach. But at this point, I feel like I'm an Ezrach just like everybody else.
Right.
It's equally my country as it is everybody else. And I might be a little different, but it's my country and this is where I made my home. And I invested my life and that it's just as much my country as it is that I'm the same type of Ezrach. I have the same connection to this country as anybody else who lives here.
100%.
What else did we not discuss? Moving to Israel also required us to learn things about the education system here. We didn't go through the education system here, and we learned through our children.
How to send Aruchat Eser. There is no Aruchat Eser in the States. And how to pack up a Aruchat Eser with mapiot, and what type of food is acceptable to send and what type of food is not acceptable to send.
But more importantly, how to help our children successfully navigate the educational system.
That's all part of it, is also knowing how to...
Right, when you're in first grade, but not
when you're in first grade.
grade.
And then the challenges of understanding the bagriyot and the challenges of understanding the whole concept of bagriyot and their final grade and hakalot and whatever it is that might be, and understanding when Sav Giyus came, what that exactly meant. And we didn't firsthand know how to help our children with that. And so we had to rely on the school to help them. And we learned through our children as they went through their Giyus, as they went through their Shirut Leumi, as they went through their applications for university, what it meant, how you get chosen for university. The whole process is different. Banking is different here. Shopping is different here. So you learn as you continue to go. And that's where, the integration and the need to really conform is important. They say that they give hakalot to new olim on their bagriyot. And unfortunately, my kids weren't here. They had just missed that cutoff, so they didn't get hakalot. But I understand that, and I think that that would level a playing field. Hakalot are important for children of olim, because they don't have that kind of support of their parents knowing what to do. So children educate their parents as well.
Is there anything that you wanted us to speak about that we didn't speak? We didn't mention?
Maybe something like how the Aliyah עיצב אתכם, איך העלייה עיצבה אתכם at the end of the day.
In what sense?
And who you are today. in a sense of the way you think, the way you act, the way you look at stuff.
Well, it made us stronger. Anytime somebody has to have a challenge and comes through with a positive experience, it made our communication greater. It made the communication with our children better because we needed to all learn from each other. We needed to have the patience to see it through. I'm proud of having made Aliyah, even though it was hard. I don't really I did regret it at the beginning, but not anymore. I'm proud to be here. I think that I guess that's... I don't know any different life because I came here when I was young. I raised my kids here. So I don't really know any kind of different life anymore. This is the life that I know.
I mean, I think in terms of our personality, in terms of our culture, had we stayed in the United States, we would have continued in that path and been totally ensconced in the American culture at this point.
I'm not sure that I agree with you on that one.
That would have been the culture that we knew, whatever. But here...
I think in any event, we're down-to-earth people, and I think we would have remained being down-to-earth people in the States.
Okay, but we would have been down-to-earth Americans.
Okay, but we would have been down-to-earth. We have family in the States, and they're all down-to-earth. So I don't believe we would have been out there. So I think that, we gave up on some luxury, but I think everything would have been matun. We would have found our way there. We weren't seeking a high life in the States, even when we were in the States. That wasn't a goal of ours, so I don't feel that we gave up on that. We would have had a simple house. Yeah, it would have been bigger because a simple house in America is bigger than a simple house here, but I don't think we would have been much different as far as our...
But I still think that as we mentioned before, we kept a little of our American culture. We took on a little bit of Israeli culture, which we wouldn't have taken on had we lived in America, which gives us a somewhat different perspective on life than had we lived in America. So it did affect us in that way. I think that when you make a big move like this, it gives you a little bit of a perspective in life in terms of what's important, what's not important. Understanding, for yourself and also for your children and your children's children and all of the generations after, that life isn't only about, just taking it easy, but that sometimes that there are important things that are important values, and that sometimes you have to sacrifice some of your comforts, some of your, the things that you're comfortable with, in order to try to achieve things that are important to you, and sometimes achieving something that's important requires effort and requires sacrifice, and I think that's something that's an important message, and by making Aliyah, it's also something that you're showing. You're not just talking about it, but you're doing it yourself. So I think that that's an important thing that just changes your life. And I think having to live and learn to adapt makes you a little bit more of a humble person.
Makes you more creative. Humble is a different concept. I think it makes you proud. I think it makes you... wouldn't call it humbling. I disagree. I think it makes you proud. I think it makes you ability to say, "Wow, I succeeded, and I can really wear that I could wear that badge on my shoulder.
But humble in the sense that, a lot of times when you're an Ole and you're in a situation where you're not on the same playing field as everybody else, because your language is a little different, your language is not as good, and your knowledge of things might not be as good because you didn't grow up here. And so in a certain sense, it's humbling in that sense, because you're in a more difficult situation than other people.
Oh yeah, for sure you're in a more difficult situation. But again, I don't feel that so much anymore. Those were the first 10 years. I feel like anything that I've achieved now, everything that we've achieved, our children have gone through the system, and we're no different really than anybody else's children. People who I work with, my children do the same exact thing. I don't think that way anymore. I might not speak the language as well as they do, but my day is no different than theirs is at this particular point in my life. That was the thing. It's not hard anymore. It just is. It's not hard anymore. The missing and the longing for family, that's hard, but the day-to-day is not hard anymore. I don't find that I'm different than anybody else anymore. I don't speak the language as well as somebody else does, but other than that, I don't find myself different. I like the style of clothes that I wear, but everybody can choose the style of clothes that they wear. It's my individuality. It's my zahut. But I don't find anymore that I'm different than everybody's different. There's no two people who are the same. That's my perspective, and it's like I said, I would say it took a good 10 years to sort of feel that kind of understanding of this is me. My language will never be as strong. I might not recognize all the old songs from Gan, but really mostly just to get through the day is no different than any other person who wakes up in the morning and gets through the day. And I think that that's integration.
Is there anything else?
You want to hear about what we think would make it easier for Olim?
If you have maybe 2 or 3 points that could make it easier for Olim.
I think you had someone at work, I remember a few years ago, who moved up north, and they said to you, some other point where they bumped into you, and they said, gee, it was so hard, so difficult for me to move up north, and we're just talking about moving up north from Yerushalayim. It was so difficult for me to leave my family, and it was only at that point that I realized a little bit what it must have been like for you to go through what the aliyah that you went through. So I think
advice that I would give to Olim is that Israel is different than anything that they recognize. They should feel proud of the heritage that they came from. And by feeling proud, it takes away a little of the embarrassment of being different. Recognize that Israel is built from a mosaic of so many different people. So in the end of the day, it really doesn't matter if you have something to say. And even in a professional world, if people come to me professionally, they're coming to me. It doesn't matter anymore that I don't speak Hebrew as well. I have something to offer. I'm a person. I still have something to offer, even if I came from a different country. I still contribute to the states and to the state of Israel, and there should be pride. I think that Israelis in the educational system and Israelis that encounter Olim as part of their klita need to understand that they can't try to erase where people came from. It's okay to integrate them into that way, but they shouldn't erase that. I think that Israelis sometimes need to be a little bit more patient towards Olim. Olim are not stupid. And
Just
if
because you
a
don't speak the
different
language as well doesn't mean that you're
stupid. And so they need to be a little bit more patient and maybe explain themselves a little more. And I'm not talking about the day-to-day people who you encounter. I'm talking about people who are instrumental in your klita. And again, I think what I would recommend to Olim is that there is no right or wrong in knowing the percentages of how cultures mesh. Find the culture, that right percentage for you and your children. And when you're settled in that and you're proud of that, then it projects to your children, and your children can then continue and grow how they are.
But I mean, from the perspective of a country that's trying to help people make aliyah, I mean, obviously there are the things that are apparent and obvious, which is trying to help people find jobs and trying to help them get their kids into educational institutions and help their children succeed. But I think the thing that probably helps people the most when they first make aliyah is probably being part of a group that's going through the same thing that they are. I mean, at least for us, I know that sometimes people say, oh, the best way to integrate is to go to a city and just, be Israeli and live amongst Israelis. But I don't agree with that. I think that it's difficult because the average Israeli does not understand what an Oleh is going through. And even if they have all of the best intentions, they can't help them because they just don't understand what it's like. And I think that for us, at least, the thing that helped us and the thing that probably helps the Ethiopian community as well,
and the French community and the Russian community,
is that if you're amongst people who are going through the same thing that you are, you help each other out, you act as family and friends. And you're able to help each other with the questions. If someone is going through something they've never encountered before in Israel and you can help them. I think that's something that helped us out a lot. Yeah.
Thank you. Very helpful, very interesting. And that's it.
You would be done.